Greetings to all of you once again. We move on today and we discuss the second chapter from René Girard, The Scapegoat. As you know, in the first chapter, Girard discusses a historical text in which he shows how the process of scapegoating takes place by looking into the events that took place during the plague, the Black Plague, yes, and how the community found the Jewish community guilty for that, even if there was no guilt, but rather they've had to find some victims in order to explain their own suffering. So the process of scapegoating has to do with a pain that is experienced by a community, especially by a community. Also, we can talk about scapegoating, individual scapegoating, that is how we personally scapegoat other human beings. But in this text, for the moment, it's quite important how communities find victims that they scapegoat in order for them to be able to go on after a certain social trauma. And in this second chapter, René Girard talks about the same process, but he discusses it in the context of different kind of text, and that is myth. Myth, especially as he was portrayed in one tragedy, Sophocles' Oedipus Rex or Oedipus the King, but also in different other texts. So we do not have to think only about tragedies that portray myth, but in this specific case, Girard contemplates quite for some pages how the process of persecution takes place in Oedipus Rex. And I like to begin with the notion of pollution, with which René Girard begins his chapter, and the same notion opens, in fact, also Sophocles' play Oedipus Rex. And the persecution in this context is a moral or psychological poisoning that the community experiences. And because the community cannot go on in the context of that poisoning, they have to find victims, and those victims are perceived by the community as the guilty party for whatever pain or trauma they go through, and these victims are scapegoated, of course. And what Girard does here is trying to figure out how the whole thing takes place in Sophocles' Oedipus the King, but also in other myths. But I will in this video, which may be a bit longer than usual. Let me see, already 3 minutes. So in this video, I will mainly discuss persecution in the context of Oedipus the King. You probably are familiar with the story, and you may also be familiar with the play. And what happens in Sophocles' Oedipus Rex is again is pollution explained by scapegoating. But even if the play opens with the idea of pollution, what happens is that Thebes is plagued. There are many diseases, and there's famine, and people try to find out a cause for that. And Oedipus, who is the king of Thebes, does what Greeks normally do in that time, of course, and that is try to find an explanation for the suffering by communicating with the gods. So he sends his brother-in-law Creon to the oracle of Delphi to find out what the problem is. And the oracle, forgive me, tells Creon that what they have to do is to get rid of pollution of the city, a pollution that is not specified in the play. So they do not explain why the pollution is present. They do not explain, or the oracle does not say why the people from Thebes suffer, but he only claims there is a pollution in the city and they have to get rid of it. No, that's a quite normal claim. As long as you have a pollution in any place, you have to get rid of it in order to be able to live a normal life. If you have some kind of diseases in a bunch of apples, what you have to do is to get rid of those apples that are bad, so all the other apples are not getting polluted by the bad apples, right? So I want to emphasize the fact that in the play, it's not the gods or the oracle, that explain why pollution is present. But rather, human beings, after finding out they have pollution in the city, which, by the way, they already knew, try to figure out what pollution may have been caused by. And they need to find the victim. Sorry for moving the video. And the victim will be Oedipus. Now, let me say a few words about the story itself, so you can see that perhaps the victim is not found by just by chance, but there are some sort of things that distinguish Oedipus from all the others. And as you know by now, Girard emphasizes that. He talks about how the victim could be different from others and how the victim has certain features that make the victim be qualified for the status of victimhood. So the story goes this way: the king and queen of Thebes, finally have a child, and the king wants to find out something about the life of the child, and the oracle tells the king that this child will grow up and kill him. So, like any good father, the king of Thebes decides to get rid of the kid, and he's asking his servant to do so. But the servant has a heart and takes the child and does not kill him, but rather puts some spikes into his feet so he cannot walk anymore. In fact, Oedipus means swollen foot. So, and he leaves the child on a mountain. He's found over there by a shepherd. The shepherd takes him to a different city, to Corinth, where there is a king and queen who do not have children, who cannot have children, and so they are very glad to take care of this kid and to become this kid's parents. Oedipus does not know that this new king and queen are not his biological parents, but he grows up and he finds out, somehow by mistake, he finds a rumor, he discovers a rumor, and the rumor goes that his parents are not his biological parents. And he doesn't go to his parents to find out whether that's true or not. But what he does is, again, what any Greek would do, that is, go to the oracle to find out from the gods what the truth is about his parents. So he goes to the oracle, and the oracle does not tell him whether his parents are or not his biological parents, but rather tells him the same thing that his father heard when he was born, and that was that he will murder his father and marry his mother. Now remember that Oedipus was brought up by two parents who were not his biological parents, and he was doubting whether they were or not his biological parents. Nevertheless, when he hears from the oracle that he will kill his father and marry his mother, he runs away from them in order to avoid fulfilling what the oracle says. On his path, he encounters an old man. They get into a fight. I will not get into the details now why they get into this fight. But in any case, the result of the fight is that Oedipus kills this old man, and then he gets to Thebes, which again is plagued, and they have many problems, mainly because of a sphinx. And the queen is alone. She's widowed. And in order to get rid of the sphinx, people had to answer the riddle, and the riddle goes this way: which being works on 3 feet in his childhood, in the morning, on 2 feet in the afternoon, and on 3 feet in the evening? And Oedipus guesses the riddle, and that's a human being. Men, it was the translation for that moment. Why is that the case? Well, because when you're a child, you work on 4, on 2 hands and 2 feet. When you're an adult, you walk on 2 feet, and then finally, when you're an old man or an old human being, you walk with a stick. So you have 3. And of course, the Sphinx dies, and so on. And Oedipus is hailed as a king, and as a hero, and as a reward for what he did, he is proclaimed a king, and he is given the queen of the city as wife. And of course, as you may have already guessed, this queen of Thebes was his mother, that he doesn't know. He doesn't know it's his mother, and she doesn't know it's her son. And of course, the man who he had killed was his father, so the king of Thebes. So after 10 years, we have this plague, and they try to explain it, and he's sending his brother-in-law slash uncle to, he doesn't know about that, of course, to the oracle to find out what the problem is in the city. And he comes back, and the oracle says, as I mentioned from the beginning, there is some sort of pollution, and the pollution has to be eliminated. And the community now has to find a guilty party, a someone who is responsible for that. And what they find out, what they blame after all, is that he, Oedipus, is the cause of all the suffering they have, because he committed patricide. He killed his own father, and he also married his mother. Two quite abominable things that one can actually do, especially, I mean, I would say anytime, but especially in the Greek times. So, that distinguishes, or not distinguishes in a sense, in a good sense, but rather uh, creates a difference between everybody in the play and Oedipus. And Girard is very careful to show that there are other features that distinguish Oedipus from all the other people in the play. He is a foreigner to some extent. He comes from the outside to Thebes, although he's also an insider, because he's someone from Thebes. He was born as the son of the king and queen of Thebes, but he was sent away at the beginning of his life because of that menace that he would kill his father. And all those features make him eligible, Girard would say, for victimhood, because he is different. And what we normally do as human beings is we attribute, and when I say normally, do not understand me incorrectly, because I saw there were some comments last week about that. It's not. I'm not trying to say that that's the normal reaction of a human being, but rather we often, let's better said this way, we often as human beings find that those people who are different than us, who are unique in some sense, who come from the outside, who are the foreigners, in different ways, are the victims that we choose when we want to explain suffering and to blame suffering on someone that is not connected with ourselves. So let me emphasize a few things. So I'm gonna say again what I said before, I think at least, and that is that Girard in this chapter does almost the same thing he did in the previous chapter, but he does it by analyzing myth. If before he discussed a historical text, now he tries to also see how mythical texts have the same kind of approach and have the same way of explaining how we as human beings engage in scapegoating without even realizing, and how we, those people who scapegoat, do not realize who our own scapegoats are, because we are blind to what we are actually doing. Thank you. I look forward to seeing you virtually again, of course, next time. And in the meantime, please send me any questions you may have about the course. Bye.